Welcome back! So, Wick is 18 weeks old now, and as you can see, we're back in our favourite coffee spot, nailing his settle. While some things absolutely never change, I do feel like we're starting to move into a slightly different stage of his training. Up until now, I've deliberately kept his formal obedience pretty light. Obviously, he's been learning since he was 6 weeks old, but I've never been in a massive rush to teach him lots of behaviours just for the sake of teaching them. This week, though, I've started being a little bit more intentional about some of the things we're working on. If everything goes according to plan, I'd eventually like to work towards IGP with Wick. So there are foundations I'm beginning to think about now. But he's also still very much a puppy, and I'm trying really hard not to forget that. So, although I'm starting to think a little bit more about obedience, a huge amount of what we do still looks like this. We're out walking, exploring, letting him experience things, apparently sitting in a canal, and generally just letting him be a dog. One thing we've started working on this week that I haven't actually caught on camera is an automatic sit at kerbs. So rather than me constantly asking him to sit, I'm starting to build the expectation that when I stop at a curb, he comes into position on my left side and sits automatically. And then there's his lead walking. If you've been following our videos, you'll know this has become an increasingly frustrating challenge. Instead of just letting him pull, I've been encouraging him back and rewarding him for walking by my side. We still have a way to go, but this week Wick has definitely been giving fewer husky vibes and my shoulders are nothing but grateful. Whilst confidence continues to build, we also have the occasional what in the name of dog is that random object. On a random Tuesday, Wick decided benches were the devil and had to be treated with suspicion. Thankfully, closer inspection made him realise it wasn't a threat to humanity and we could proceed with our walk as though nothing had happened. And then, in complete contrast to freaking out over an inanimate object, Wick decided to engage in some parkour. This was probably my favourite moment of the entire week. I didn't put him on this wall, I didn't lure him onto it, and I wasn't trying to create some sort of confidence building exercise. He chose to get up there himself, so I just let him. Initially, he was pretty confident about the whole thing, but as he gets further along, the footing becomes more difficult, and there were definitely a couple of moments where you can see him having to think about what he's doing. At this point, I genuinely thought he might jump down or look to me for some reassurance, but he didn't. He just worked it out, and I absolutely loved that. Not the fact that he can walk along a wall that matters to me. I have absolutely no competitive ambitions for dry stone wall walking. Is that even a thing? It's the fact that he chose to investigate something, became slightly unsure, and then worked through it without needing me to solve the problem for him. That's the kind of confidence I really want to preserve as he grows up. I think this clip shows where I'm starting to become really conscious of the balance I want with Wick. Ultimately, I want a dog who can work very precisely with me, but I also want a dog who can think. I want curiosity, independence. I want him willing to investigate things and make decisions without constantly waiting for me to tell him what comes next. But I also want him to have fun and enjoy opportunities to engage in behaviours he finds naturally rewarding, which is why we've started doing some drive work with him. For me, both sides of that are the foundations for any dog, regardless of breed. And then we have the other side of it. This is where I'm starting to get a little bit more intentional with his actual obedience. We've started doing more with his Platz, or down for those of you who don't speak German, which really hasn't been something I've concentrated on much before now. It's not even something I have excessive experience in teaching my other dogs. It's not a skill I have ever really required. To be clear, this isn't formal IGP training just yet. These are just very early behaviours and foundations that, if we continue down that route, may eventually become part of something much more formal. At this age, I'm much more interested in him wanting to work with me. I want engagement, I want enthusiasm, and I want him enjoying the interaction. Equally as important is to note that my skills need developing somewhat as a handler as well. I am a pet companion dog trainer, and although there are things that I know and there are things that I can do, I have realised that if we're going to go down this IPG route, my mechanics, how I actually do things, are nowhere near precise enough and can ultimately be confusing for the dog. So watching videos back, even now I'm cringing. I can't believe the things that I have done. and things that I need to work on and tighten up. But it's all part of the learning journey. And rather than looking at anything as a failure, it's all an opportunity to develop and do better. And I'm not putting pressure on myself and I'm not putting pressure on him. Which is why we are back to Wick's preferred curriculum, climbing on stuff. Again, this is the kind of thing I really like letting him investigate. Different surfaces, different heights, different ways of using his body. I'm not particularly bothered about turning these moments into formal exercises. Sometimes I think there's enormous value in simply letting a puppy go, "What's that?" and giving him enough space to figure it out. Especially with a dog that I'm hoping will eventually be confident working in lots of different environments. Just let him go and enjoy, explore, experience, and hopefully try something else in the future. Now we're back to a bit more training here. Now, this is something I'm having to keep reminding myself of with Wick. You can do too much with an intelligent puppy. He learns very quickly, which sounds like the easiest thing in the world. And obviously it's lovely, but it also makes it incredibly tempting to keep going. He understands that skill? Brilliant. Let's teach him something else. Oh, he understands that too? Great. What's next? And I don't actually want to get into that cycle with him. Just because he's capable of learning something doesn't mean he needs to learn it today. And it doesn't mean that we need to work on it every day. So I'm trying to keep these little sessions short, rewarding, and fun, no more than 3 minutes at a time. I would much rather stop with him wanting more than keep going until he's had enough and no longer wants to engage with me. And then we finish pretty much where I think a 19-week-old puppy should be. Out exploring, having some freedom, sniffing things, running around, and just being Wick. I think that's probably the biggest thing I'm trying to hold on to at the moment. I have ambitions for this dog. There are things I'd love to do with him, and I'm starting to become much more deliberate about laying the foundations that might get us there. But I don't know yet exactly what Wick is going to become. And I don't want to be in such a hurry to find out that I forget to enjoy this bit. So that's episode 11. A little more intention, some very early obedience foundations, the beginnings of some drive work, which is entirely new to me, so we are both on a really steep learning curve with that one, and one completely unplanned wall that somehow ended up being my favourite training moment of the week. Right now, I'm just trying to give him the foundations for whatever comes next, without being in too much of a hurry to build the finished dog. I'll see you in episode 12.